Welcome to the Roundtable Consult. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Williams, and I'm joined by my wonderful ethnic Nubian cousin and co-host, attorney Sonia Madison. How you doing, Sonia?
Well, let's start with Happy Black History Month. I mean,
Happy Black History Month.
trying to get rid of a lot of that, but we're still going technology here on the Roundtable Consult. So, hence with my sweatshirt with many of the accomplishments and achievements of Black Americans, because it is American history. So, happy Black History Month.
So why does it have to be Black history? Why can't it just be American history?
That's something you have to ask people who teach history in books and refuse to acknowledge our contributions, that we have to then make sure that we're intentional about that. Otherwise,
Amen.
it will be erased.
Amen. 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 Well, people brought in Black History Month like a boom in Cincinnati. I don't know if you're familiar with some of the things that went on in Cincinnati. In my hometown, actually not far from one of the neighborhoods where I grew up, Lincoln Heights, there were a couple of neo-Nazis that decided that they would go across this bridge over the overpass and demonstrate and have their flags up and say some things like I forgot what the flag said. It said something about this country belongs to white men or whatever it was supposed to be. But the residents of Lincoln Heights, now they did this in Lincoln Heights, and Lincoln Heights has been historically a Black neighborhood. I think it might even be the oldest Black settlement in the United States was Lincoln Heights, and they had the audacity to walk up into Lincoln Heights and demonstrate this way. Well, the residents of Lincoln Heights then came out and they said, not on our ground, not in our backyard, not in 2025. And they came right up on the overpass where they were. The police was right over there. They went right past the police and everything. And next thing you know, I didn't see all of the details. Next thing you know, the guys are loaded up their U-Haul truck and we're out of there. They left their flags behind, and you see all the residents stomping on the flags and the Nazi flags and eventually burned them. Victory. Kudos to Lincoln Heights in
Was this
Cincinnati,
another
Ohio.
Alabama boat showdown?
But this is what we have to do, I think, at some point. And, I get it. I get it.
What
White
do you
people
get?
upset.
Maybe I'm missing. What do you get?
I get it that white men feel a little demoralized and feel a little
Why do you get
dejected.
that is a legitimate, justified feeling?
I didn't say that it's justified. I didn't
But
justify
you
it. I
get
just
it
said I
though. So I'm like,
understand
I
it.
don't even understand how you get it. Like I'm
I
trying
understand.
to
I understand why you think about it. For centuries, you were prioritized.
and
You
still are.
had all privilege, and you
And
still
still
are.
are.
But you
So
got
again,
much less. You got less than you have today than you
oh, I
did
don't think
20 years
so.
ago.
I
You have
mean, the
less.
fact that Trump won shows that you still have as much as you had in the past.
No, it shows that they're trying to get it back. They're trying to get it back. One thought that I was thinking about, and I haven't looked at this number yet, but remember a couple of years ago how you looked at the Republican legislature and in Congress, the U.S. legislature, um, and it was all white men. You barely saw another color. You saw very few women. And now you look in the Republican Party. Guess what they got? They have women. They have people of color. And why do they have that? It didn't just randomly happen. They had a DEI initiative. They had initiative to increase their diversity. Why? Because they knew if they didn't, they wouldn't be able to continue to get the electorate and win the electoral votes, whether it was for Senate races, local, or whatever. So they knew they needed to include people of other ethnicities and of diverse backgrounds. And I think there's even a Trump appointee right now who's a openly gay man. I forget which one it is, who's openly gay. And I was like, wow, look at this. This is diversity, equity, and inclusion all up in the Republican Party. But they figure we got enough now. We got enough to meet our goal of getting in power. Let's shut it off. And now let's villainize it. Let's demonize DEI now that we've benefited from it.
You see more than I do because I looked at Trump administration not only back in 2016 but now, and it looks nothing but white white males. And so and it's interesting when I don't like really sexuality. I don't care if it's gay or straight. I don't like that being a, I guess, talking point when it comes to diversity. And it's only again because to me, your sexuality really should not care, should not be of concern to how you do the job. Um, Obviously, we see historically when it comes to physical features like, of course, race, ethnicity, and national origin, people, and you know this better than I do in the healthcare field, will make presumptions. And that's why you do need representation. You do need faces to show that, hey, listen, these presumptions, stereotypes are myths, they're not true, and they're there to oppress a group of people. But you're not going to impress me when you throw in a face that thinks just like you, a face that thinks just like you, and call it diversity. But again, I look at Trump's administration before, I've looked at it now. You are able to see a little bit more than I have, but to me it just looks like a whole bunch of white males came together and this is where we are.
They did they did exactly what they criticized, and that is to simply put faces in there, but the mouth and what they're being saying, the policy and everything else is all still the same. So what they really don't want is diversity. They want various shades of the same thing and various shapes of the same thing. Let me just review a couple of things that's going on in his Kash Patel, first Indian to head the FBI and the son of immigrant parents.
In which we also
Mark,
know that they're trying to get rid of the FBI. So enjoy that
I
position while
get,
you
I
can.
get, I get it, but I'm just showing you some of the diversity that they're having and that they get to claim right now. Marco Rubio is the first Latino Secretary of State, also a son of an immigrant parents. Susie Wells, the first female chief of staff. Kudos, Susie Wells. Scott Bessent, that's what it is. Scott Bessent. He's the an openly gay man. Is now
White
the
male,
secretary.
still white
Secretary, I
male.
get it, but
Okay,
he's still
I mean,
gay.
I can
That's
say
still
it safe.
diversity. It's still diversity. You got the party now embracing an openly gay man, even though they're trying now to get rid of gay marriage and everything else too. But we'll see what happens. Kristi Noem, the second woman secretary of Homeland Security. Richard Grenell, an openly gay man. He's an envoy. He's an envoy who brought back the 6 American hostages. Tulsi Gabbard, second woman to head the National Intelligence. Um, she's of Samoan descent. So the question is this DEI or is it merit based? And my question is, I
See, I
think
don't
so.
even phrase that question because you are presuming that DEI is not merit, and that's the problem. People are equating DEI to mean unqualified, and that's an
And I,
unfortunate truth.
I agree. So
So
why does
don't
it
be
have to
part of the
be either
problem.
or?
So don't be
Does it
part
have
of
to
the
be either
problem.
or?
Don't be
But
part of the problem, and
but
phrase
do,
it in that manner.
but does it have to be either or? Can it be
Again, I
both?
don't think
Can
it
it
ever
can it
was
both be
either
merit
or.
based?
I don't think it ever was either or.
Yeah.
It's always been merit based. Always been merit based.
So you're telling me that Christy Nome that you believe that Kash Patel is worthy of is qualified to head the
I'm
FBI.
telling you, the question is, are these merit based or are these people that are just loyalists? And I would say they're loyalists.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
I would not put DEI in the same phrase as what you're
So
trying to what you're trying to do
so
because
what
it's
would you call it?
always
So
been
what
that.
would you call it? What would you call it when a party enlist participants, whether there be appointments or whether they be elections and nominations, based because they know they need to reach a certain demographic. And so we know we need to reach out to some of the homosexuals. Let's go get the LGBT guy and put him in. We know we need to reach out to some of the Hispanics. Let's get one of the Latinos and get him into it. But they're not qualified. But you're doing it simply to check the box. What would you call that?
And so again, I don't think that the Republican Party, I think you're giving them a lot of credit. I don't think they reached out to them saying, hey, we need to find or extend some favor to the homosexual community or extend some favor to the Latino community. I think they reached out to people who were loyalists. And those loyalists came in all shapes, sizes, like we said. I mean, just because you're a different color does not mean you don't have a mindset that's similar to what their mindset is. And so if you've got people that are trying to hop on your bandwagon and they look differently than you, great. But your first and foremost is, are you loyal to what I'm trying to do? And so that's why I'm saying they're loyalists and they're
Don't
unqualified
disagree.
loyalists, but they are loyalists.
I don't disagree with you, but you can get white men who are also equally
And
as
they do
loyal.
have that too.
So why not put them all as white men who are loyalists? Because he's got plenty of them that he could have chosen from.
And
Why
he
involve women? Why involve women? Why involve Indians? Why
because not
involve gay
now,
men?
but now I'm not going to say every white man is a loyalist either. And so
I'm not
that's
saying that either, but there are
but
plenty
that's
of
what I'm
white
saying.
men
First
who
and
are
foremost, you got
loyalists
to
who
be
could
a
have filled
loyalist.
these positions.
But I'm saying first and foremost, you got to be a loyalist. And so not
Okay, I get
not
that.
every white
We
man is
agree
a
there.
loyalist. And so
We agree.
if you got some loyalists who are more gonna go and they happen to be of a different race, hey, they've made your qualification more so than a white man who's not gonna be loyal to you.
I agree. But the reality is that there's an abundance of loyal white men who are as competent as these other people from diverse backgrounds, whether it's ethnicity, orientation, or whatever. They made a choice. They chose one over the other. If they were simply looking to fill their cabinet and fill these positions with only white men, then they would have done that. But they recognize that in order to win elections, they need a little bit more diverse of an electorate. And as a result, they say, okay, let's get just the minimum amount that we need to get. Make sure that they're loyal, and then we can say we also have a diverse field too. Years ago, when was it, 10 years ago? Oh, they came under great scrutiny because, when you showed the pictures of the Republicans and the Democrats side by side and in Congress, and the stark distinction that you could see, even on small pictures, small headshots of all of the representatives and senators, they came under great scrutiny because of that. And they immediately, I think it was even 2016 or something like that, when all these women finally walked into Congress and they all wore white. And I don't know if it was just Democrats, but it was also even Republicans at that time had more women elected to Congress than ever before. They recognized that they needed to diversify. They found the limit, the threshold of diversification that they can tolerate, and they decided to say, let's leave it there. So my question to you is, what is it called when you realize that you need to diversify, but and you hire people who are incompetent just simply because you need to diversify? What is that called?
But that's what I'm saying. I'm pulling that back to you because I don't think the Republican Party feels a need to diversify. Again, just because you have people who are brown or women that agree with you doesn't mean you are bringing them in just because they're brown and women. You bringing them in because they are loyal to your cause. And so, and maybe there's a little bit of hope in me that says not every white man is going to want to align themselves with Trump. And so if you've got a Byron Daniels or a Tulsi Gabbard who is much more into your loyalty than, say, Mike Pence or other white men, then yeah, you're going to go with the person who is much more loyal to you. And so that's why I'm like, I will push that question back to you. You think that the Republican Party feels the need to diversify. I don't think they do feel that need. So what would you call it?
So I still call it DEI still. And unfortunately, so my question to you, let's take the Republican Party out of it altogether. What do you call it when you hire somebody or you appoint someone or you elect someone who is unqualified in every other aspect except for the fact that they check one of your demographic boxes that you need? What do you call it?
unqualified. What do you mean? I don't understand
But
what you're
what
getting at.
the
They're
only
unqualified
qualification,
candidate.
the only qualification that they had, what's the motive behind it? Because nobody wants to hire somebody who's unqualified just for the sake of hiring an
But that's where
unqualified
I
person.
disagree. Trump is all about, are you loyal to me? I don't care if you were qualified to
I'm
be
not talking about Trump.
the
I'm just talking
Department of
about
Defense.
generically.
If you
I'm
are
talking about
loyal to me,
generically.
come on board. So
Generically, we're not talking about Trump right now. I'm asking you a question. A corporation that says, or a corporation or a political party or anybody that says, hey, we need to check these demographic boxes, and we're willing to hire anybody right now to fill that position as long as they check that box. And I think this is facetious. It's a hypothetical.
yeah,
I don't
because
believe that.
again,
I don't believe that
they're
it
not
happens.
hiring unqualified people just so
I
you
don't
can
believe
say
that.
I have a black person in the room. That's not what's happening. It's not what's happening.
You can't. Nothing is absolute. Nothing is absolute. Let's come back. I will not go out on that limb and say that
I
every
would go out on
person.
that limb because to
I
me,
would not do that.
it's more of a problem with legacy. It's more of a problem with politics. It's more of a
Okay,
problem
so we got
with
names for it.
money.
You got names
That
for
that
that.
is more, but you're the one putting let's put a face on it. You're the one
You
making it
called it
about race
legacy.
or gender. And I'm saying
You
no,
called it
no,
legacy.
no. Legacy
You
could be
called
black,
you called it
white, beige, and blue.
legacy.
I mean, legacy is legacy. Like that's what I'm saying. But you're trying to put it down to those protected characteristics that we are in the legal system would call race, gender, national origin, all that kind of stuff. And I'm saying, listen, no one is being hired just because you're black. You need to still be qualified. Now, again, if that qualification means, hey, you have a certain amount of revenue that will bring in business, or hey, it means that you've got connections that can help with this business. You're still quantifying that qualification, but it's not, hey, you're black, come on in. No, no, no. You have to be qualified. You
Do
have to bring
you
something.
do you honestly believe that there has never been a black person or a woman or a Latino person or some other person of underrepresented status who was less qualified, who got the position because of their because they met that demographic?
And that's to me a question for you because to me, I
That was my.
am not
You're
going
gonna
to
ask the question that I'm
put
asking
any.
you. Do
That's a
you
question
believe?
for you.
I
Because
can't
to
tell you
me,
what you
even if
believe.
that happened, it's not worth this conversation because it's not happening enough to warrant any type of change, any type
Okay,
of
then you just said it
back
doesn't
and forth
happen.
debate.
My point is
I'm
that it
saying,
does happen,
you're right. I'm
or at
saying
least it
yes.
has
But
happened.
if your point is that it does because you have seen it happen, I haven't seen it happen. So I'm saying it doesn't happen, but you must clearly have seen it happen. So for you,
I'm
what does
just
it mean in that context for you?
I'm asking you. I simply asked you, do you believe? That's all I
And
said.
I've already said, no, I don't
And
believe
if
it
you say
happens.
no, then you can say
You
help my
believe it happens.
unbelief.
So then what does it mean for you? That's what I'm saying. This is
So
a
you can say
question that you have to answer because I
here's
don't believe it happens.
the belief is I do believe that. I do believe that sometimes people hire people based who are less qualified based off of their race. It's been happening throughout history for white people. And what do you call it there? You call it white privilege. We got a name for it at that point. And when we attack white privilege, the white people don't want to accept that that's happening. But the reality is that it is. And we as black people, we have to get to the point where we start acknowledging, yes, we understand that occasionally, sometimes this happens where somebody is lesser qualified and they get the position based off the color of their skin. I get that. There are a lot of black employers who will hire somebody, a black employee, over a white employee who might be a little bit more qualified. Why? Because they're black. That happens. That same thing happens with white people. We are no better than white people in that regard. People tend to favor people who most favor them. And so that's you can call it black privilege. If we had controls of the means of production in society, then we could call it black privilege. But it happens, and we have to be honest and willing enough to give it a name. You can call it DEI. You can call it DEI gone awry, or wrongful DEI. You got to give it some kind of a name, and it's basically a racial bias. If you want to call it racial bias, call it, but it exists. And to deny that it exists is a problem. I don't agree with conflating it with the concept of DEI because diversity, equity, and inclusion is very much important. And I don't believe that people are on a broad scale being given positions and appointments that they're not qualified for just based off of their gender or based off of their demographic or their ethnicity. I do believe that the Republican Party, who's rejecting DEI right now, has made a huge statement in their rejection of it to say, yeah, okay, well, we knew a couple years ago that we were very deficient in these areas, and we made an intentional effort to improve our diversity in the Congress, what we have in our party, but we got enough right now. And we need to put a stop to it. And that's basically what they've done. They've done just enough to get them over the hurdle. And to not acknowledge that, I think, is also disingenuous.
Well, I'll leave that to the comments. So should we go to our topic? Because obviously, again, I disagree, but I don't want to keep
Yeah,
belaboring the point because I don't think it's an issue enough for us to spend an hour. It's just not an issue to me. And I definitely do not want, because obviously DEI is a trigger word for people.
it
Um,
is.
and it's become, again, conflated with the use of an N word. It's become being conflated with the use of unqualified. And I just think that's
Mm.
completely unfair and out of context and wrong. So
I agree with you. I agree with you. And I think what happens often is that people take a small portion of what's happening and make it seem like it's happening all over. It's no different than what was happening with the riots. When we were looking at the BLM protests, 97% of those were peaceful, but they really highlighted the 3% of them that were peaceful and use that to villainize BLM altogether. We have to start to recognize, excuse me,
but the
recognize this
3% that was
strategy.
not peaceful, but go ahead.
Say that again.
You said 3% that was peaceful, but you meant 3% that was not peaceful, but go ahead.
3% that was not peaceful. That's why it's 97% were peaceful and 3% were riots broke out. And often in those riots, they were not necessarily BLM um,
Okay.
delegates. They were people who came in and started the riots. But the point is that they were used to villainize and to demonize the entire BLM movement. And we see that that's part of the playbook of Republicans is to say, hey, let's take something that happens in obscurity and make it and it's throw it in your face so that you think that it's happening in predominance, and it isn't. But what is happening in predominance and abundance is a lot of executive orders right now. Yeah, I mean they're
And
coming
I'm more
left and
so
right.
concerned about these new appointees. I mean, you got the Russell Vought, who was the author of Project 2025, has now been appointed to the White House Budget Director position. So he's in charge of the money. We've got RFK Jr. passing through the Senate panel, which I'm sure you can talk about how wonderfully qualified he is for the Department of Health and Human Services. Yeah, we did get a judge, some good news. We did get a federal judge that overturned one of the executive orders related to birthright citizenship. So we've got a halt on that. I think we've also got a judge that overturned some of the funding freezes. So that is, even though I'm hearing that while that has been overturned, so I'm not sure if the money has been flowing as quickly yet, but at least that executive order has been overturned. We know that he has revoked Biden's security. So again, kind of like your boy, Dr. Fauci.
Now that being said, Biden did revoke Donald Trump's after January 6th. His was revoked as well. So, and Biden said he has no reason to really have access to it, and that was his justification
Yeah,
for it. So,
yeah. Um, so yeah, we've got the Trump is still trumping.
mm, loudly, he's loudly trumpeting. So I'm looking at this whole notion of his Elon Musk having access to these different departments. And I guess the biggest concern had been his, at least starting out, biggest concern has been their access to the Department of Treasury and their payment systems, which to me, I'm like, that's kind of concerning. It is concerning.
I know
A judge,
it
I
wasn't
think.
concerning that he became a government official in general. Now you're concerned.
Oh, I was concerned by that, but when you have unfettered access and
Yeah.
unsupervised, unchecked um, access to the federal checkbook, there's a problem with that. And a federal judge, and I'm watching a lot of my friends now saying, "Oh, the Secretary of what's the name? Benty or something like that. Benty, the secretary, the new secretary of Treasury says, "Oh no, these are actually Treasury employees and they have read-only access." And so people are now saying, "See why y'all worried about this and everything?" I said, "How many days did they have full access to it?" That's what you didn't tell us right at that point. We don't know what they access before the judge required them to have only read-only access. And the person who is a Treasury employee that they're now saying, "Oh, he's a Treasury employee." Guess what? He just recently became a Treasury employee. He just recently graduated high school. So there's a problem with that. And I'm not being ageist or anything like that, but there is a certain level of maturity that you get when you start aging a little bit. Hopefully you get that
Oh,
most
so faster.
19-year-olds won't have. You know, the one guy who named himself on social media Big Balls. Come on, really? This is who you want being able to have access to the federal treasury? And it's not so much that, okay, you can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, but you got to demonstrate a level of maturity and an ability to be able to control what you say and information that you share. One of them, LZ or whatever his name is, or something like the name begin with the E. I think he actually was just recently fired from another company because he divulged proprietary information to a competitor. And yet, this is one of the hackers, the people that you allow to get into the federal treasury. One of them actually had won a contest for cyber hacking, you know, and participated with a company that advertised cyber attacks for hire. You know, these are teenagers and young 20-year-olds who are enamored by wealth, easily persuaded, and have loose lips. Obviously, cannot control a lot of the things that they say. One of them divulging secrets, the other one putting out on social media a name called Big Balls, another one um, actually spewing Indian hatred. You obviously don't have self-control. You might be brilliant, you might be a genius, and that doesn't assure me with you being able to go into the treasury. And read-only access doesn't assure me of it because you obviously are a hacker for hire. And okay,
Sounds
but a
like
lot
he's
of people aren't
qualified to
sure
me
about
for the
that.
Trump administration. Sounds like you meet the qualifications to me.
Yeah.
Because I mean, to me, they're all the Trump administration right now is again all these executive orders, all every judge is having to pretty much work overtime. It's about the chaos. It's about the chaos. And for some context, because I know this Elon Musk has just been confusing as to because a lot of people are like, why? What is he doing? What is he doing? I mean, we know I think he said what Department of some kind of government efficiency. Um,
DOGE.
yeah.
That's it.
And you know, in theory, I think a lot of people hear that and they're like, well, yes, great. I mean, there should be a look at a budget or look at what federal is spending, and it's time to start cutting here and there. Again, one of the problems is I don't understand what he's cutting, why he's cutting certain things. And there, to some degree, like when you stop the US aid, okay, that was money that was helping, you know, people in other countries. We know Africa, there's some AIDS things down there. We know again Syria. We are giving aid to other countries, and now you're just cutting it all off without again any explanation. And I get we have this oh America first concept, but at the same time, helping other countries also helps America. I mean, you know, you know, this selfish mentality that, hey, every man for itself. Okay, we do our best when our youngest or our weakest or our, you know, poorest do well. it helps everyone. And so, again, so with Elon Musk, again, he's cutting federal spending, and that's why he's in to some degree working with the Federal Reserve, but he's having access to, Social Security number, sensitive information. And to me, read only does not then prohibit him from having that access to sensitive information. And so it's like, on the one hand, we had a president running on the fact that, hey, the government is able to do too much. And now you're giving all this sensitive information to someone who, again, is a social media giant who even ran Twitter to the ground to some degree. I mean, they started losing money once he kind of came in there, and he laid off people immediately when he came in there. And we're seeing that now. I mean, we've got Trump giving out federal buyouts that I think is also still being challenged in the federal courts, whether these buyouts are appropriate. We've got him doing hiring freezes. We've got him saying, I want to get rid of the Department of Education. I want to get rid of the CIA. I want to get rid of the FBI. Okay, these are important entities that, do we really want to lose that for the sake of reducing federal spending? And so this lack of transparency, which is part of the reason why he won, is because people feel like government is all about conspiracy theories and it's not transparent. And yet we're got an administration who has given us no transparency. And we also know that while you talk about 20-year-olds who have a fame issue, Trump has a fame issue. The guy has put over bankruptcies more than we can count. And it's probably because he wants to keep a lot of this money for himself, and he's not paying his workers. He's had discrimination lawsuits left, right, up and down. And so, again, he's no different than the 20-year-olds we talk about, which is why I say, hey, they're all qualified for this administration. that is exactly what he stands for. And while he's reducing spending, please believe he's going to ensure that his paycheck either remains the same or continues to increase. He will not be reducing that. And so again, this is where we are.
His paycheck is coming from the stock market, and so when the stock market starts to drop, he back off of things like he did with the Canada and Mexico tariffs. As soon as the market,
yes. And now Gaza. Now we're gonna go get Gaza, and it's just you just stop. To some degree, you can't even shake your head anymore. It's just like, what is the fire today?
So let's talk about some of the strategies. So the same strategy that they use to demonize BLM, the same strategy that they're using to demonize DEI is the one that they're using to justify their actions right now. The transparency that, oh yeah, I watched I forget who it was, some cabinet member, or no, it was a senator saying, oh yeah, Elon Musk is being very transparent. Every day he's out publishing on Twitter, on X. He's publishing everything he finds on X. That's what we call transparency. Criminal. That's what he says. He just tweets up criminal. Oh, so much criminal activity, and that's transparency. No, transparency is coming before Congress and taking an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and being held accountable to that about the things that you have access, the things that you have learned, and the things that are of concern to you. But instead, what you do, you leak out the things that are obscure, the little things, that you're like, oh yeah, this was happening in any governmental system. There's going to be some inefficiency. Excuse me, there's going to be some inefficiency. There's probably going to be some pocket lining as well. And hopefully there's no fraudulent activity, but even if there is some fraudulent activity.
I mean, again, the guy's been convicted 34 times, but yes, let's hope that he's changed.
No, I'm saying what Elon is discovering in his investigations. If Elon even uncovers fraud, he's going to take something that occurs in obscurity and make it seem like it's the majority, it's the prominence, it's so pervasive. And this is the tactic that we're constantly using. Even look at how they started with USAID. So why did they start with USAID? USAID represents about 0.1% of the federal budget. If you were really trying to rein in spending, then you would have started with one of the some of the other departments that have much more spending than USAID. But they knew what was happening with USAID. USAID was given money to initiatives outside of the U.S. and to people of color, and so you could villainize all this money going to people in shithole countries. I mean, s-hole countries, um, and rile up your base like that. Assuming that they shut down the entire U.S. aid budget, which is 0.1% of the U.S. entire budget, right? Assuming that they do that, you know what that saves us? That saves us, if you make a $50,000 a year, that saves you the equivalent of $50. Whoa, we are saving all kinds of money here. Go on, Elon, you're doing exactly what you're
And
supposed
it
to
will
do.
not reduce the price of eggs, just so you know.
But the perspective, but what they're doing, they're advancing a narrative that says, look at all this governmental wasteful spending, because you look at $49 million and you say, that's a lot of money going toward, what we would perceive as frivolous things, going toward an opera, going to advance LGBTQ Q protections in other countries and human rights things, humanitarian aids or something. You look at all those things and you say these are all left leaning pet projects. Well, of course, that's because who was just in the office? It was a left leaning administration, and these governments, when right leaning administrations take on, guess what? They're going to start funding things that are a little bit more right leaning. So they started with the U.S. aid because they knew that that could be a little bit more incendiary. It does has no large effect. It's the equivalent of saving you $50 if you earn $50,000 a year. So let's put that in perspective here. Now they're going to move on to some other things. So you start asking the question then, where's the transparency? And tweeting about it is not transparency. Democrats wanted to bring Elon in before the House and question him about what are you accessing? Why are you accessing it? What have you found up to this point? Hey, that's what they're supposed to do according to Article 1 of the Constitution, right? Yeah, seems like it makes sense. But the Republicans are blocked that effort and said, we're happy with his tweets. Why? Because it's rallying up the base by taking a few obscure things and making it seem blown out of proportion.
As well
It's the
as they
same
don't want
playbook.
the truth being out there. I mean, let's also call the spade the spade. They don't want to be, they don't want him being subpoenaed, because what they did was they refused to allow the subpoena to go through. And they don't want him saying exactly what he's doing. And so, I mean, I think it's a mixture of both. Yeah, you're rallying your base on Twitter, but also you get to avoid having to really say what you're reducing your spending on.
Accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because the reality is we probably wouldn't like it. And so I mean a lot of people are saying, oh, we think this Gaza thing is a distraction. We think a lot of the stuff that Trump, even his EOs, are a distraction, because they feel like, again, what's really going on is probably not something that we would like. And it's interesting how I think he got a lot of Arab Americans, the people that were protesting when it came to the Palestine, whatever. And now they're upset. Like, wait, you're talking about taking over Gaza? Why are you surprised? This is what you voted for. Like, he showed you who he was. You just decided that it was much better to have, I guess, more of a conservative, right-wing, mindset than to have a more probably moderate. Because let's be honest, Kamala Harris is not left leaning. I would probably say she's in the middle. And neither was Biden. I would say that they were really more so moderates. And when you have a Congress who is majority Republican, it keeps those checks and balances in order. But now we've got a Republican Congress who is, again, controls the budget, controls the purse. We've got a Republican executive in Trump. I mean, and while he's got a Republican Supreme Court, let's be clear, and while there are, thankfully, Biden input a lot of judges in the position that are not as conservative, at the same time, he's got the Supreme Court. And so, again, those checks and balances are getting out the window.
Well, thankfully, we still have them. The federal courts,
We can put that in quotes. We still have them.
we still have some of them. I don't know how effective they are, but
Because
we
like you
still
just
have them.
said, we're trying to get a subpoena and they're saying no. So
Yeah.
there went our checks and balances right there.
Yeah. But what will happen? So let's do this. I think we worry less when we know what's going on. And this is my belief, at least. Some people worry more when they hear what's going. Wait a minute, what are you going to do to me? What? I don't know. But I think the chaos is what causes us a lot of worry, and the chaos is strategic. Steve Bannon, I think in 2019 or something, or whenever he some years ago said something, identified a strategy. He said it has to be a rapid fire, and that's not the exact word that he said, but you just have to bombard people with so much information. And I look at what's going on, much like you've seen the attacks on Israel, where they sent all of these missiles over, and then they got the Iron Dome. The Iron Dome is there to shoot down all the other missiles that are coming in. But if you send enough of them across, the Iron Dome can't catch all of them. There are going to be some of them that actually land. And that's the strategy that Trump is doing right now. Unfortunately, our Iron Dome in the United States is the judicial system. And unfortunately, also, that judicial system doesn't move quickly. He can write an executive order much faster than you can write an appeal to the court to block it or to put a stay on it. And then the court you still have to present it to the court. The court still have to make a ruling on it. And then by the time that there's a ruling on it, the damage has already been done, especially if you're using high tech and techie geniuses who can go in and access and hack into governmental systems and adjust it to however they want it to do. They're like, yeah, fine, okay. Damage has been done. Okay, we'll back off of it. If you go and you withhold aid for certain of these governmental agencies, international agencies that depend on a constant flow of finance from the United States government, all you have to do is hold up the funding for about 4 or 5 days, and then you have a tremendous impact. Well, now they're almost, some of them may be obliterated and completely eradicated. And then by the time the judge rules on it, they says, okay, sorry, we'll back off of it. Well, the harm has already been done.
Back off. Because again, we saw with the president immunity question. The Supreme Court ruled on it, but they essentially said, there's some, but you guys go figure out what it is. And so it can still be an ever flowing loop. And as we saw, had the Supreme Court did say, no, this is what his immunity is limit to, he might have gotten a conviction. But we let that sit for so long, and this is aside from the state conviction, but what January 6th, the insurrection stuff, we've let that sit for so long, and now that whole committee is dismantled. The whole special counsel, all that is gone. And so I say that to say, yeah, the judiciary is important, but at the same time, they're also to some degree moving in the wave of an administration too. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs.
So he said he was going to be dictator on day number one. It's like for month number one, apparently he's going to be dictator, and he's doing it, and it's an incredible strategy. But what it's done is it's identified the holes in our democracy, and we have to have some kind of ways to be able to um, mend those holes and prevent them in the future from being exploited, because the next president can do the exact same things. And no doubt the next president will do the exact same thing and tie American people and American dollars up in litigation. I mean, just think about how much we're going to have in litigation right now, just from the executive orders that he's written during the first week, not counting the ones in the second
I don't know
week.
if you remember back in 2016 when he had that Muslim ban, and you saw how long that went through some courts. I mean, that's what I said. It's interesting that you started off with there's a worry and we have and not knowing what's going on, but at the same time we do know what's going on. We talked about Project 2025. We talked about him saying he wants to be a dictator on day one. We talked about the mass deportation that he wants to do. So to some degree, some of this worry is, oh, wait a minute, he can actually get this through. I mean, he's actually doing it. Now, granted, I think when you're talking to, at least talking to some of the marginalized communities, we're like, hey, we warned you, but you were so focused on being able to have an entitlement over me that you didn't care. But again, some of this is no, I worried that he's doing exactly what he said he's gonna do.
Arab Americans for Trump actually figured out they were like, we're going to change our name. Because they're like, well, that didn't work out so well for us. And I get it. I do think that here's the one consolation that we have in it. And that is that the judiciary, I believe, will eventually check itself. And if it doesn't check itself, there will be another election. There will be another election in 4 years. And the things that were done mostly through executive order can easily be undone. Now, if he were doing this through Congress, which would be the right thing to do, which he currently has Congress, he has the votes in the House to be able to do it, you would have much more lasting effect. But he doesn't want to take that chance. The reason why is because he already suffered the huge embarrassment with from John McCain when John McCain said, boom,
Oh,
I'll
no,
turn down the
Affordable Care Act. Try
yes,
again.
you're right. And so he learned his lesson from the first time where he says, I don't want to take the chance on some rogue Republican not supporting my agenda. So what I'm going to do is jump in and make all these quick actions so that the American people can see that I'm getting things done and I'm getting them done quickly. I mean, they're already taking down the sign on the front of the USAID building or whatever, or wherever that was occurring. And all of that's performative. Is just to really get you to be able to see, one, to get Democrats to fret, two, to get Republicans to rejoice and say, oh, yeah, look at all the things that Donald Trump is doing. And then when all the things that he gets done is overturned because it was done illegally, guess what? They're going to be upset about it. And it's just going to, I think,
Like I said, I think you're a little hopeful,
inside,
but with
right.
one of the points you made though is, but damage is already being done. Again, you've sent out these federal buyouts. I read somewhere, I think over 20,000 federal employees have already started resigning. You're sending out a message that the Department of Education is going to get eliminated. And so just by that, people start changing how they approach that position. They start moving away. And so even if it comes back that no, the Department of Education is here to stay, you've already lost a lot of your good teachers. You probably already lost a lot of students who, again, were then left behind in the process. You've already lost a lot of funding because there are states who do rely on federal funding for the Department of Education. So much damage is being done. And then we have to go back, and people will call it DEI, unfortunately, but that is, again, one of those trigger words to try to say unqualified. But you have to go back and put remedial measures for the damage you cause.
Yeah, so that's why people who hear all this stuff don't be threatened. I think even in the FBI,
But
people
no,
are telling them stand.
be Fred, because that's to me is how he got elected. Is people saying, "Oh, don't listen to him. It's not going to be an issue. He's
No,
not
no,
going to
no.
do
I mean, listen to him, see what he's doing. But you understand that the things that he's doing right now, this light affliction is but for a moment, and it works for you a far greater weight of glory. And so the people in the FBI are encouraging to stand your ground. Don't just take this buyout. First of all, because you're probably going to get stiffed on it because he doesn't have the authority to grant that. But secondly, he can't dismantle the FBI. And if he does, if you do let him dismantle the FBI and the CIA, then that puts our national security at risk, at grave risk. And so for several reasons, people have to just look at this and say, a lot of this is bluster. And with the appropriate amount of time, it's all going to get corrected. The problem is that our Iron Dome is not working as effectively as it should. But it will eventually work. It just requires a little bit of patience. And so
I
I'm
disagree
not,
that it'll be corrected, but I don't think it'll be, again, there will be damage. There will
it'll be
be,
damaged.
and so you're not going to be able to go back to what it was because there's damage now. And some of that damage is you are going to have people who are overly qualified for an FBI position leaving. It's kind of like the air traffic controls when we talked about the plane crash. You guys decided that, hey, you brought in a bill that said let's bring in more air traffic in the sky, but you did not increase your air traffic controls. And here we are. And instead of saying, hey, listen, we made a mistake and not hiring more, you blame immediately on DEI without any evidence to the contrary. And you're going to deter women and minorities from going after those positions. Because if anything goes wrong, they're the ones that's going to be put on the blame. And so that to me is damage that didn't happen. Now you're not going to get great qualified candidates because you've made it a point to say anything goes wrong, I'm pointing the finger at you.
Let me use this analogy. I see patients in my office all the time, broken nose. And if you try to repair a broken nose too soon, it's a mistake because you can't tell just how broken it is because the swelling is there. And so there's a sweet spot in which time you have an opportunity to repair it. If you don't repair it in that time, then you have to go back in and you have to refracture it. You have to cause damage in order to repair it. Same thing with the eustachian tube. Eustachian tube, which regulates the pressure inside the middle ear. If it's not functioning properly, it can cause other problems. The way that we repair it is to go in, inflate a balloon, cause tissue damage. And as it heals functioning a little bit better. Or your nose heals in the proper position at that time. There have been clearly some things that went awry in our government. Somebody came and gave our government a fractured nose and displaced it. And we waited too long to repair it. The only way to repair it is sometimes that allow it to be damaged. And with appropriate attention, patience, and care, it can be restored. Yes, it's going to be damaged, but when it's repaired, it could come back and be repaired in a better situation to say, let's not allow what happened before to happen again. And we watch with more close oversight. So I'm still remain optimistic that there is an option. Well, part of me do. I try to, from a civil standpoint. I try to. Now I'll tell you what my spiritual antennas are saying. My spiritual antenna is taking me to Revelation 13, where the beast. We're talking about looking at two beasts that are happening right now. One beast is Donald Trump, where the beast that the Bible says will speak all these haughty words and blasphemous things, and and that he will cause he'll give power to the second beast who calls down fire from heaven, who I think is Elon Musk, frankly. When you start and people marvel that he called down fire from heaven, you start looking, you're like, wait a minute. What's the biggest thing that Elon Musk has done? Most amazing thing that he's done lately. And that was to send that rocket up and to bring that rocket back down into its harness with great precision. Everybody, oh my God, who's ever done that before? And people marvel at that. And so I look at Revelation 13. I do think that there may be something that's going on there. So in the back of my mind, I'm still saying I don't want to be deceived and shaken by the things that I'm looking at right now. On one hand, I'm optimistic that it can be repaired and that our judicial systems will uphold. On the other hand, I'm looking at it and saying maybe this is beast one and beast two prophesied in the Bible. And if it is, then Jesus is coming back and I'm ready for that as well. So for this reason, I will not let my heart be troubled.
I do think there is something in saying, hey, get your affairs in order. I know that oftentimes when we particularly read the New Testament, it is the disciples thinking, hey, it's about to come. He's coming. Y'all got to get it in order before it's too late. And I do feel like that deja vu is happening for me on that spiritual, like, hey, you got to get your affairs in order. You got to start looking more towards God. If anything, this hopefully will bring you closer to him, seeing how man can be so disappointing and so hurtful. And if you feel prosecuted or persecuted or whatever, that find your blessing in that, knowing that you're doing that for the purpose of
Okay. Guess we lost Sonya there. So I'm going to finish what she said. If you find yourself being persecuted, do it with the understanding that you're doing it for the sake of Christ and that it's part of your commission as a Christian. Yeah, endure suffering like a good soldier, the Bible tells us to do, knowing that you'll, in the end, She just texted me and said, "My bad, my computer died." I'm gonna have to let her know that you can actually plug in so you don't die prematurely. Uh, but in any case, the point is that yeah, endure these things with great suffering. The Bible tells us about the desolation that is about to come. And when we see the desolation, it actually said run to the hills. It said, don't go back and try to grab those things that are important to you. Get out. He said there will be people who call, and I think this is Matthew 24. Said people will call over and say, over here is Christ, over here is Christ. This is the mission of Christ. This is the appointment of Christ. This is God's Cyrus. And don't fall for all those things the Bible is saying. He said, when you see all these things come to pass, when you start seeing the iniquity and sin abound and increase. It says, don't get weary on those things. Don't let your heart grow wax cold, but instead understand that this is all part of the prophetic occurrence for the believer. And so we just have to get ready. I posted something a couple of weeks ago. I said, we err as Christians, or something to this extent. So we err as Christians when we prioritize prevention of persecution rather than preparation for persecution. Um, we should be prepared as if we were really doing the work of Christ as the church, the instruments, the hands and feet of Jesus. If we were really doing his work, we would be preparing people for what is to come. We would tell them to, hey, expect it that you think sin is bad right now. You think lasciviousness, wow, that's a Bible word right there. You think lasciviousness is run amok and that the world has just lost their mind. Absolutely, that's what it's supposed to do. And your job is not to stop it from losing its mind. And your job especially is not to stop it from losing its mind by using and exercising your levers of democracy. Do what you got to do from a civic standpoint, but understand that it's going to happen. You cannot stop Donald Trump from doing what Donald Trump is going to do at this moment. And the reason why is because if it is part of the biblical prophecy, if it's part of the end times and ushering in the end times, it's going to happen whether you voted for him or not. And so I don't begrudge people who voted for Donald Trump. I know a lot of people like who I have several family members and many friends who did vote for Donald Trump. I don't begrudge them at all. I'm like, I know you had to, kind of like Pharaoh had to resist letting the children of Israel go. You had to do it. And the reason why is because the scripture must be fulfilled. And Donald Trump or some other antichrist must assume a power of leadership. And guess what? Christians, the church, the real Christians, those who actually follow Jesus Christ and his methods and his ways, we're not going to like that. We're not going to like it at all. But we need to take heart knowing that if we endure to the end, the Bible says that we will be saved. And so my encouragement is to everybody out there now, let not your heart be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in Jesus. He's gone away to prepare that place for us. I know we say that all the time at funerals, but the reality is that we should not let our heart be troubled about any circumstance that we see going on in the United States. One final thought, and I said this before I came on the air earlier, live on live broadcast. We have to remember that when we see sin increasing in the world, that the sinners are not our enemies. They're the harvest. And the Bible says that the harvest is ripe, but the laborers are few. Jesus said that when he walked around and saw all the people, saw all the crowds wandering aimlessly, helpless, he called them, and they were lost in their sin. He said, the harvest is ripe, but the laborer is few. Why? Why is the laborers few? Because so many of us have now identified the sinner as our enemy and not the harvest. So don't be alarmed by what Donald Trump is doing because the end is coming. And if it is, Either one, you can have confidence, one, that the levers of our democracy and the mechanisms of the judiciary will correct it, or you can have faith in God that says if He blows up the whole thing, then maybe it's part of the end times. Then you can also have let not your heart be troubled by the abundance of sin that you see, recognizing that is merely an abundant and ripe harvest. So, with that, I hope you will not let your heart be troubled. Thanks for joining us and tuning into the Roundtable Consult. We are here every week, Saturday mornings, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch us on your favorite podcast listening platform or on our YouTube channel. Do go catch some of these episodes in the past as well. You can also catch us on starradio.com. Until next week, be blessed and let not your heart be troubled.